David, great to have you on the show. Let's get right into market performance, David. Certainly, the market seems to be continuing that bullish note. And I just want to ask you, how much do you think the MPC decision expected tomorrow is impacting sentiment on the market right now? And certainly also inflation numbers came out during the weekend. We saw inflation down to 11.7%. How much is that impacting on market sentiment and performance right now?
Thank you very much, Uche. It's a pleasure being with you today. I like to also observe, just like you did, that the bullish run in the market that started about 3 weeks ago was actually sustained today with the all-share index appreciating by about 0.14%, apparently driven by Dangote cement that went up very slightly by about 2 kobo. That was material, considering the material nature of Dangote cement's contribution to the market cap of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Now, looking at what will happen tomorrow when the MPC meets, nobody or no analysts, to the best of my knowledge, is anticipating any material change from status quo, considering the fact that the macroeconomy has been very, very stable. The foreign reserve has continued to increase. And just like you mentioned, inflation is also declining, which therefore means that there is a reasonable level of stability in the macroeconomy, which ordinarily should not provoke any change in the status quo of monetary policy. And that is good news to the equities market. Perhaps that is what investors are already reacting to by sustaining their bullish demand in the market. And so I don't really expect any change in monetary policies when the MPC meets tomorrow. And that essentially is good news for equities. Although there could be a slight macroeconomic liquidity squeeze within the week, because the Debt Management Office will be selling some bonds within the week. DMO will try to raise about 70 billion naira in bonds within the week. That could squeeze the financial system a little bit. But that notwithstanding, we are seeing a reasonable level of stability also in the equities market, considering the fact that market making will take off from tomorrow.
But I mean, David, before we get into the whole market-making issue, let's talk about some specific stocks. Certainly, Guinness is sort of on the spotlight today. They finally released those Q4 2012 numbers. Now, looking at the numbers, gross profit up 15% year-on-year. PBT down 10% year-on-year. Now, analysts certainly are saying it's sort of within expectation, not fantastic numbers. What's your take? And of course, how did this impact? How did investors sort of react to these results coming out?
Although there was no material reaction today, other than that the volume was a little high, about 223,000 units were traded today. But I would say that before that result was released, expectations were quite high, and those expectations actually drove the price of Guinness to its present level of 260 naira. But looking at the figures that were released today, it does appear that the enthusiasm has a little bit been dampened, because the yield of the proposed dividend of 8 naira or bonus of 143 is just about 3% of the price of the security. And when compared to the yield in the banking sector, it appears not very, very competitive. But that notwithstanding is a premium stock, is a multinational stock, and so notwithstanding its yield, it still commands a lot, it still attracts a lot of interest from especially foreign investors who are well acquainted with a security like Guinness. But if one starts to analyze the reasons behind the decline in the profit after tax, which was actually 14 billion naira, compared to almost 18 billion naira for the same period last year, one would notice that there were compelling reasons
That's
for
right.
Okay, Uche, I'm listening to you. It's
okay.
Like you need to ask some
yes,
questions.
actually, I wanted, because we're running out of time there. Certainly, you brought up the market makers just before you began to talk about Guinness, and that they're coming on board tomorrow, which is big news on the market. Now, how do you think them coming on the market will impact sentiment? And certainly, I'd love to get your take on the whole program. A couple of analysts have given their views. Some feel that they don't like the fact that retail investors have been left out. Others mentioned that you feel the market makers may have too much power. What is your take on how this whole program is going to impact the market?
Yeah, the commencement of market making in the Nigerian stock market is a development that is long been awaited, and so all stakeholders are actually anticipating the takeoff tomorrow with a lot of enthusiasm. You see, market making in a market like ours is so essential to smoothing the volatility of the market, considering the depth of instruments in the market.
So you feel, certainly David, seems like you feel it's going to be a positive thing, the market makers coming on board tomorrow.
It is very, very positive.
Okay, great, David. Unfortunately, we've run out of time there. Certainly, we'll be following what happens with the whole market making program. Thank you so much, David Adonri, GM at Lambeth Trust and Investment.